Disenfranchised language. It is, I call it unconscious language. It's where we're just reacting with words and labels. We're not critically thinking and processing through data and information. And it's like, how could this be eliciting or reacting or triggering a response inside, which is what's happening so much right now with emotions. People are getting triggered very quickly because you're not asking yourself, what else could this be teaching me? What else can I do to see this other side? Again, back to the forced choice dichotomy. Are we looking at both sides of the story?
Nobody truly knows. And if anybody say that they know everything,
Yeah, that's for sure.
Then they're full of shit, because we just know what we are recovering from ancient, his story, her story, right? And so these are all, you have facts, I guess. You could go back in time and look at written documentation of certain things that happened. But again, the observer is going to give their version of reality.
Every single value level has pros and cons,
right?
Has light and darkness, and it's you're learning from both, right? It's like you can't have the sunlight if we don't have moonlight, and it's the same thing. It's like looking at this not in a dichotomous way, but the reason why you can quickly evolve. I believe we've evolved our relationship and our patterns and behaviors because we really looked at, okay, what are some of the behaviors and habits we need to get rid of at values level 2, 3, 4, and 5? And what can we embrace and adopt in all those values levels that really creates the most efficient way of living and the greatest results and more success, more love and abundance and gratitude. Welcome to Your True Alchemy,
where we talk about ancient wisdom and how it applies to modern mastery in your health, wealth, business, relationships, and life. And today we are continuing on with the conversation about conscious language, part 3. And I really want to go back and talk a little bit about the power of the spoken word and how it is connected to the system we were speaking about in the last episode is values level 4, is that a lot of the language you're going to hear in values level 4 is going to sometimes disenfranchise you. And what does that mean to you?
Disenfranchised language.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I call it unconscious language. It's where we're just reacting with words and labels. We're not critically thinking and processing through data and information. And it's like, how could this be eliciting or reacting or triggering a response inside, which is what's happening so much right now with emotions. Mm-hmm. People are getting triggered very quickly because you're not asking yourself, what else could this be teaching me? What else can I do to see this other side? Again, back to the forced choice dichotomy. Are we looking at both sides of the story?
Right. And, the conversation about conscious language from my perspective is really, how do we use our language to create a manifest with volition instead of being totally unconscious of what you manifest? And, I have been a victim of my own conscious or unconscious language in the past. I used to create a reality of everything that I didn't want, and I didn't understand why until I realized that I was at choice, and I didn't even realize that my language was casting spells into reality every single day.
Sure.
And it's something that, we weren't taught in schools how to use the spoken word. In one of the episodes that we did originally about conscious language, we talked about modal operators of necessity and impossibility. And I said that I believe it's slave language, right? We're unconsciously putting ourselves in a prison.
Yeah, most people don't know when we speak of slave language, it's language that actually traps you.
Enslaves us.
It enslaves you to your own thoughts, your own creativity, right? Your own choices. And what it does is limits your potential. So from your perspective, what do people need to do so they don't get trapped in language? What prevents people from speaking more consciously? What prevents people from raising the vibration of the words that are coming out of their mouth? Because I don't think people truly realize how important this is.
I think it comes back to, from my perspective, education. And this is one of the reasons why we're talking about this. And even going through the history of, values level systems and how they're correlated to how we choose to speak that we bring about in reality. And once you understand, you can't unlearn it, right? And so then it's when you understand the system or the matrix of which you've been indoctrinated in, then you have a choice to unplug from it or choose to stay in it, and there is no values judgment on that.
My question to everyone listening to this is, do you realize that language determines where in the world you live?
Right.
Meaning, do you want to live consciously abundantly, wealthy, prosperously, happy, peaceful, lovingly, grateful? Or do you want to just kind of be the norm, this mediocre type of language, this mediocre form of communication?
Right. And I believe we're evolving through that. So that's why we're going through the evolution of consciousness, these value systems that we are co-creating in reality right now of the evolution of consciousness. And this is where people are talking about how we're moving from the three-dimensional world to the 5D. What does that mean? And having the footing in one and the other. We truly are evolving out of the traumas and dramas, and we're integrating the shadow. From my perspective, that's what that means, is that we are first taking radical self-ownership for where we are in this pickle that we've created for ourselves. We're educating ourselves to how to unlearn and relearn to be the best version of ourselves, to master this beautiful gift from God or given to you by you through spirit, whatever your belief system is the avatar body. That is an ascension machine. How do you use it? How do you use the power of the mind to focus on what you want to create reality? But then how do you use the power of the spoken word to create reality? With the spells that you're casting through what you say every day and how you feel every day. And that is how we're moving into the 5D, is being able to have that, I guess, volition or control over reality. And it's a paradox, right? We have control, but we don't have control at the same time. And more than ever, your focus and how you speak is so important to master.
That's how you're going to up-level this technology. We're so focused on Ascension and AI. And yes, all that's great if we're, going to evolve with the times of technology. The first piece of technology we all should be really strongly considering on an upgrade is our mind, our body, and the words that speak between the two, because our mind and body needs to become one. We've been trapped in this society that mind is God in a way, or, you can only mentalism is one of the universal laws.
Right.
So we've got to figure this out logically, and logic gets us, there's beautiful pieces to game theory and critical thinking. We must have that piece. That's a guarantee. And how do we become more associated in our body? So we're making this intuitive up level, which is part of the language we speak. Because if we're getting trapped and speaking language that is just kind of careless language, in a way, we're not speaking our truth in a way that's going to actually up-level our own body, our own health, our relationships, our businesses.
And when we say body, we mean connecting in with the mind, our beautiful mind that we have, that we've been gifted, the mind that's internal, but the external mind, but then also the mind of the heart. And so that's body intelligence, but that communicates through the heart and emotions.
Absolutely.
And when you're working with that, then you have the ability to manifest very, very quickly. And it's important to go back and, talk a little bit about just big picture, the systems we've already talked about. And I think that to give a context or lens that we didn't say before that's really important is that as we're growing and evolving as humans in this reality, right? The consciousness that we're developing through the effect of our environment, the cause and effect essentially that happens, you'll find that in every system of thinking, you'll find that there is a rejection of an old to then fully adopting a new, to then coming in balance, as Miguel, our elder Mayan, will say, is that, and this is where you see the pendulum swing back and forth to extremism.
Right.
Which a lot of people will look at what's happening now in the political environment. It's super extreme.
It's this extreme
it's polarizing,
pendulum now.
Right?
And then we're swinging back.
Yeah.
We got to find some balance in the center.
And people look at it as, oh no, I can't believe it's so polarizing. And from our perspective, from the lens of transformation and elevation, it actually is happening for us, not to us. So then we can come more in balance to find our center.
So what's the first step to finding the center? What's the first step that we need to be thinking about? We need to be considering. You mean, obviously we're doing training and coaching, and there's a huge industry around performance coaching and just in general coaching now, which is powerful because it's the new upgraded way of human performance.
I mean, I look
Where do
back
we start?
to
What's the
I look
first
back
step?
to scripture and or the Hermetic text, or Jesus even saying, like, treat your neighbor as you would treat yourself, the golden rule. I mean, it's so freaking simple, but it's really difficult to do. And in the NLP world, we say, respect other people's model of the world, which means that we all are facets of each other and that we all bleed red and we are all brothers and sisters, no matter what our background, our upbringing, our religious belief systems, the traumas and dramas we've had in our life. We all can see ourselves in each other. And that's the hope that we're talking about, this elevation of consciousness, is that I hope that when we're going through these different levels, you can see yourself in some of it, right? Maybe not all of it, but you can see yourself in some of it, and you can have compassion that other people find things that are really important to them that you may not agree with, but it's right for them based upon their history.
Sure.
Right? What do you think?
Well, I go to one of the most powerful teachings is the law of correspondence. It's in the Bible. And, it's kind of like you said, do unto others as you would want done to yourself. It's a golden rule, but it's also, I interpret that as cause and effect, which is also a universal law. So cause and effect is just an easier way to break down law of correspondence. Really, they mean the same thing, is that which is above is that which is below, and that which is below is that which is above. And that just tells us that that which is outside of us is inside of us, and that which is inside of us is also outside of us.
Mm-hmm.
So the way to look at this without judging people and coming down on this right and wrong, which is a total bullshit construct in and of itself right now, it's like there's a right way to do everything and there's a wrong way, and the right way. There's good to that in structure. And then when we start brutalizing or condemning the people that think it's, the wrong way, then that's where the battle begins. And we're still in this us versus them. And so if you look at that, there's somebody outside of you that you cannot stand, a political figure, anyone, right? Friends, that's inside of you. Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be able to recognize what's outside of you if it wasn't already inside of you. Either a trauma, a story, something you're healing, something you've moved through, or something you haven't healed through. And to me, that's where the real work begins. The great work begins in looking inward so that we can ascend, so we can up-level our language. Because if we can't learn how to communicate with each other, first you got to communicate with yourself. You can't communicate with others until you figure out you. And that is a big piece to me, is like cause and effect goes back to radical self-responsibility. Where are we not taking responsibility in our life, in our health? Because nobody's coming to save us and nobody's coming to save you from you. And I go back to that because it's so true. It's like, I think programmed, like kneeling is in us to like look for the bailout. It's in us to like, somebody is around the corner to help us. And that's not to say you can't ask for help in communities and get mentors and coaches to help you guide this uncharted territory if you're growing a business or you're in a relationship struggle or a health issue. It's like find your true north by really testing your boundaries of responsibility.
100%. And then also having compassion, right? Going back to the teachings of, Buddhism and Jesus and every tradition around the world that is a heart-based tradition, is that it goes back to having compassion and love for not only yourself, but for the people around you.
I would say it starts with yourself first,
Right?
right? And having compassion for the failures, having compassion for the things that you've done wrong or the people you've done wrong, because if you can't forgive yourself, it's going to be tough. See, this is the thing that I think people see. They point the finger and they go, that son of a gun, that MFer. And what they really are doing is judging, blaming, but they also have that same judgment and blame inside that they haven't forgiven themselves for. And so somebody outside of them just triggers the hell out of them because it's asking them to say, hey, look inside and figure out where you can forgive yourself for the things you've done and heal. And the reality is forgiveness isn't for someone else. It's for yourself.
Right. And whenever you point the finger at someone else, you have 3 fingers pointed back because you can't see what in someone else and judge someone else if you are not already judging yourself for similar things unconsciously. And so let's go back, as we're just reviewing to touch base on the value systems that we've covered so far. And so remember, values level 2 system is family and tribe and
modern day
clan.
family.
It's modern day family. blood is thicker than water. It's those family lineage values. It's all about legacy. The person that is speaking in this values level and or motivated through this values level, they're going to do everything for the family. They're going to do everything for the tribe. And they are willing to sacrifice themselves for the good of the family or for the legacy or for tradition.
And then look at it beyond family. Look at it lateral way of looking at different contexts is like sports is so much tribal. There's so many tribal things in sports. Like I remember in 2005 when I had season tickets to the 49ers, San Francisco 49ers. I took my mom to a Friday opening game. It wasn't even the main game. It was like preseason. And it was the Oakland Raiders when they were still in Oakland and the San Francisco 49ers. And after like an hour into the game, I was like, I think I made a poor decision here bringing my mom to this crazy, crazy game. Like it was almost fights breaking out, just belligerent craziness. Like literally the Raiders and the tribe fans wanted to kill and trump and beat down the 49ers. And the 49er tribe wanted to kill the Oakland Raiders. And it's like, I'm like looking at this like, holy crap. It's like both sides are gangs.
Mm-hmm.
They
it's like
really
a fraternity,
are.
Right?
It's 100%. It's like us against them. And so that is such, I'm saying this story because it's in our programming.
Right.
It is in our DNA to band together with people that are like us and then go against the other tribe out there to protect what we have.
And another tip off of values level 2 is it's a closed system. So you can't question anything out of the belief systems of the lineage, the elders, tradition.
Don't
this is
question
the way
the
we
chief.
do it. This is the way.
This is the way of the Mandalorian. This is the way.
We don't have explanation of why we don't do it differently, even though that,
we have
this
no
is
idea.
unfunctional anymore.
Yeah.
But there's also beauty in that. Like if you think about all of the mystery school teachings, so think about a lot of these shamanism, the Mayan teachings that we talked to with Miguel. He's an elder that the codex has been passed down and permission has been given to him to share this wisdom, not only inside of the Maya, but outside the Maya. And that was not something traditionally, they would share that wisdom with the world. That's not something that they would do, but they actually have given permission to be able to share this time because we're going through a transition in humanity. Same thing in Egypt or in the Viking tradition or in the Peruvian tradition. All of this stuff, all the wisdom would be passed down through oral tradition, and you would be working your way up in terms of rank.
Ascension
Through the practices that you would do. You'd be either voted in or there would be a certain spiritual path that you would take to then have that knowledge. Now we have access to that knowledge all over the internet without having any of that discipline or practice to be in place. And so is it right or wrong? It just is, right? And just know that root of a mystery school type style is rooted in values level 2 because that's where it came from originally. And so you'll know that you're in a values level 2 system if this is the only way to get to source, right? That's thinking very much in a closed system. And so for an example, we went and, worked within the Mayan tradition or not the Mayan tradition, we did that as well, but in the Hawaiian tradition. And within the lineage, it was kind of poo-pooed on learning other traditions. It's like, if you're going to do this path, you're doing only this path, which I totally appreciate, right? You can respect that. And there was no gray area to be practicing other things while you're doing that. And there's many reasons why that happens, but that's a tall tale sign of a system inside of values level 2.
That's a closed system.
As a closed system.
Where like the tradition and the root of the foundational teachings and rituals and ceremonies of tradition is beautiful. And if you're stuck in that, know that that's a consequence. You can grow. You can also not grow. You can also stay exactly where you are. And so it's not to like judge it, but to say, hey, how can I take the best and look at, okay, in order for me to evolve as a human, what do I need to do to get to this next mode of thinking, which is all it is. Mm-hmm. It's a consciousness, which is, again, packets of patterns and information. So it comes down to the complexity of my thinking. Does it fit my goals? Does it align with my vision and my mission and purpose of what I want to do in life to help people make impact, make money, do what I got to do. And I think what's funny about this, there's this story that I read. It was like the family got together for Thanksgiving, and they had this big ham, and they cut it like in half. And then somebody was like, why do we always cut this in half? We've been doing this for years. She went and like asked mom. Mom was there. And then,
well, I don't know. I mean, we just always done it. It's just the way it is.
And she's like, it's just the way we always did it. Why don't you go ask your grandma? And then she asked grandma. And then grandma was like, I don't really remember why we started doing this. And then she went to like, I don't know, great grandma, someone that was in the family that was obviously
Turns
there.
out that they didn't have a pot big enough to put the ham in.
The oven was too small.
Or something like that.
The oven was so small one year that they literally had to cut this ham in half. And they've just been doing that every year, whether the oven was small or large. And they did it every year for like 8-10 years. It'd been going on for decades, almost a decade. And I find that fascinating because that's where it's like, when you get back to the root of the tradition, is it functional?
Right.
That's all you have to ask yourself.
And
is it
they're
functional?
also not throwing the baby out with the bathwater too. There is, in an old tradition of lineage where the wisdom keeper would share this information when the initiate or the student would be ready. And by the way, values level 2 is cult, right? Not necessarily in a bad way, occultism,
Culture.
like secret societies, fraternities, and so they have all these rituals that you go through in order to then work your way up the ranks to have specific knowledge, but also become humble and worthy, right, of that knowledge.
And you can respect.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And I believe that everybody ought to find something where they go wholehearted in and experience that path of initiation through going deep in one thing. I think that's a really important thing on our human journey. And if you don't agree with certain things, just know that inside that system, like for an example, the system of the Golden Dawn, we have a friend of ours that was in that, but she then got kicked out because she was questioning, right? She was, saying, well, why do we do this way? And so so that's the values level 2 closed system. So then the person that is the outcast that questions, or maybe they don't want to go along with all the rules, maybe they want to take the best and leave the rest. Then they, as the black sheep essentially. So they either get kicked out of the flock, they get ostracized, or they choose to leave because they want to start their own thing. And so the modern day teenager that's rebelling and bucking the system and asking too many questions, that's the rite of passage that child will go through, right? And so becoming a values level 3 in that moment is actually it's a good thing for human development.
In fact, enough people, from my perspective, with looking at patterns and behaviors that have gone on just over the last 5 years from now and since 2020. It happened well before that. But those patterns will tell us that a society isn't actualized enough VL3, which is the thing you do when you're like, dads and moms rules don't fit my mode of thinking at 18, 16, 19, 20,
or
and
13.
I'm going to move out of the house. So if the system is closed, there's nothing wrong with a closed system. You have to ask yourself, is the closed system functional and working for your goals? Like, are you actualized? Are you empowered by this system? And if you get to a point where what I think we're not doing enough of, which I believe wholeheartedly, we should be asking questions, question everything. Mm-hmm. It's like, Mom, why do we cut the ham in half? Right. And then you go back to the fact that we don't need to cut the ham in half because the oven's so damn large. Are we making more work for ourselves? That doesn't mean you need to throw out the ham. That's the tradition. Keep the tradition, but like figure out, does the ham need to be cut in half?
Right.
And that's what's happening right now.
And another thing is that and we'll talk about this in values level 6 and beyond, is that then complete rejection of everything that was tradition now has then broken down tradition so much that there is no reverence for any sort of tradition or having a spiritual path or the family values. And it's just totally broken up, and there's no structure whatsoever. And people are so disconnected from family, and the lineage has been broken. So it's not one or the other. It's, let's look at this and see how you can apply certain things. Yes, maybe you don't want to cut the ham in half. However, having a family unit where there's structure and discipline and there is authority is healthy for a child to grow up.
Sure.
Where the kids are, you know what I mean? Like the
family
kids are
values
running the
are
family.
a beautiful thing.
Because you'll see some families now that have the kids, everything is working around the child versus the parents being parents, right?
And the parents having a happy, peaceful, loving life too, right? And so that's a big piece is that right there is like, so what we're seeing a lot of right now is Values level 4, people are either leaving. We've had a lot of clients that are leaving some kind of structured religious system. They're going back into 3 to say, I'm going to figure this out on my own. I need to be kind of a little bit of a rebel here. I need to get back to individuality. I need to figure out what I want. And there's nothing wrong with that. So we're going from a 4 system, religion, structure. We're seeing this in the Mormon.
Doing the right thing.
We're seeing this in the Mormon church. We're seeing this with Christianity. We're seeing this with a lot of different structured religious foundations. The people are leaving because it doesn't fit their values anymore.
Or perhaps the type of brand of religion, it's very
dogmatic.
Yeah. And it also, there's a lot of corruption within inside of it.
That's what a lot of people have seen. They've seen the corruption. They saw this pastor that had a scandal in front of the whole congregation.
And they're not walking the walk with integrity, or the system is so rigid. Remember, values level 4 is all about rigidity and law and order and justice. And, there's a lot of repression of emotions and of what you desire. Desire is considered a negative thing.
Pleasure is bad.
Pleasure is bad. Having sex is bad. Well, it's good for having children, but there's no pleasure in it. So
no need to
want
it
It's
for
very
anything
repressive
else.
in some ways. And so then because that person has never really figured out what they want, because maybe they got indoctrinated into values level 4 so quickly
Very
as a
young.
child, they get to 40 years old and they have a midlife crisis, right? They have
they
have their Uranus in opposition, which activates their Kundalini. They realize their entire life is not even what they want.
And they're not happy.
Yeah.
They're maybe looking for
sex.
a relationship, or not realizing the relationship they're in is this beautiful relationship that they desire anymore. Their health is showing some signs of deterioration, or
they've become
challenge.
Roommates, right? And everything's for the kids.
Yep. And so it's like, man, they're like, I don't really feel empowered.
Like
in fact, I'm kind of feeling depressed, sad, and a little guilt.
And so what do they
shame.
do? And so what do they do? The woman, she'll end up, if they get a divorce, right? A lot of times the woman in the situation, she'll go crazy and start wearing her 16-year-old daughter's clothing and start acting, getting her, because maybe she never got to have one night stands. She never got to do values level 3 because she got pregnant and got married. And this is not right or wrong. It's just, maybe she never got to go and experience other sexual relationships. So now she's, wearing the mini skirt and she's wearing high heels, putting on makeup. The same thing for guys will show up as getting the Corvette.
Yep.
And playing the high school music in the garage.
Well, I was talking to a guy the other day who is looking to come through one of our retreats. And he was like, I started asking questions to the church. I started asking questions to the bishop. And they're like, you don't need to know those answers. Like, he was instantly like kind of taken back that it's like, wow, it's not a more openly, communicated, transparent system as I thought it was. And so as soon as people start to ask more questions and the answers don't either logically make sense, or it's a shutdown of like, you don't need to go there, right? Like, don't turn that stone over because you don't need to know. That's a tall tale sign. That's a fascinating piece of communication and behavior of like, well, I'm curious. And now I'm realizing there's a ceiling there, and that's actually stifling growth or empowerment of some form. If that's how people are taking it, based on what I'm hearing, that's how many people are taking it.
And the important thing too to remember is that the recycling of values level 2 is going to be in values level 4. The difference is values level 2 is coming from a shamanic type of, polytheistic type of, polytheism means that there's more than one God, right? Instead of the monotheism where there's Trinity and or there is only one God. But it's going to be a recycling of the same kind of closed system. So it's in the book, right? So everything is in the book, and
which is values
the
level
scripture,
4.
And it's asking, so anytime somebody asks, well, in Christianity, for what purpose are we not talking about the book of Enoch and for the book of Mary Magdalene and the Gnostic texts, the Dead Sea Scrolls, as well as perhaps even the Nag Hammadi or the Book of Mary and the Book of Thomas and Philip, that have, if you start going into that research, could have been taken out of the equation.
Much of it was.
Because when you start putting that all together, you see this beautiful version of Christianity and a spiritual teaching that's beyond the boundaries of religion. And that's what I think that's going to be happening, because in the next, 250, because as we're moving into the age of Aquarius, we're going to be breaking down the boundaries of religion and looking at all religions all have the root in truth, and then recovering this missing information that puts more context to everything, to where then we can see each other as brothers and sisters, and we can believe in whatever people want to believe, give the rights to whatever people want to believe, and see that there is a higher power beyond everything that we can think is possible, and we can unite through that.
And back to the pendulum swing, what people are doing is finding the fault or the lack of
throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
They're saying, I'm going to get out of this religious construct, and then they swing to the far end and go extreme and either believe in nothing or find fault in the church or fault in the religion.
And they reject it.
And then they reject it. But the reality is, instead of maybe just finding the fault, look at also like, how could it be better? Is there information that's taken out? Is there knowledge and wisdom that's not shared openly and abundantly to empower one to even greater levels of consciousness, evolution, ascension, spiritual practices? And that's kind of what we're doing, right? We're looking at Christ consciousness as a beautiful thing. Deb and I are spiritual people, but I'm also looking at like, how does this play into the universe? How does this play into the 7 laws of the universe? How does this play into the 7 stages of alchemy? This whole thing is, how do we alchemize our life? What we're doing is taking the energy in our life and alchemizing it around what we love, the people we want to do that with, the community we want to be a part of and serve, instead of like left and right. It's right, it's wrong. I'm going to be extreme in this. How can we be more balanced? And that's really our whole approach here. It's like, how do we become more balanced? If there's information left out, let's do some research and find that information, consider putting that information back on the table, right?
Yeah.
And if there's information that we haven't yet discovered, and we ask the questions why, or, for what purpose are we doing this? Or how can this benefit my mission and purpose and goals? And how can we help our neighbors and brothers and sisters more? Then it's like, let's analyze and audit that information.
And be also open to the idea that everything that we're saying right now is complete. It could be complete bullshit. Right? Because we're just giving a lens of what I'm just saying. I mean, nobody truly knows. And if anybody say that they know everything,
yeah, that's for sure,
then they're full of shit, because we just know what we are recovering from ancient, his story, her story. Right. And so these are all, you have facts. I guess you could go back in time and look at written documentation of certain things that happened. But again, the observer is going to give their version of reality.
At the end of the day, if this is something you are struggling with as far as like theory concepts, like do your research, right? So that you can get some grasp and get to some root cause facts, or at least some root cause history. Because when you go back in history, there's a lot of stuff that we realize, especially in school, we weren't really taught the most accurate history.
Yeah.
If you truly have done that research, you could postulate that there's definitely some main points that have been taken out. And like, I'll just say this, like around all of these holidays, there's some things that have been misled. Like as an example, Thanksgiving, a beautiful time for us to come together in America and give thanks to our families. And there was definitely some brutal things that happened that created that day.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Right.
Unbelievable
and
brutality.
So many other holidays. Right. So it doesn't mean I'm going to throw away and say, oh, I don't love Thanksgiving. I still love to get with my family and be around friends and community. So that's where I'm neutral to it. It's like, because the past is the past. I can't change the past. I can definitely change my perception now of moving forward, though, and having, again, greater levels of compassion when someone says, I will not celebrate Thanksgiving. Okay. I completely respect that. In fact, power to you. And then there's a lot of people like that, and I think that's getting curious, and it's also having compassion for the people that maybe
St. Patty's Day as well. St. Patrick's start looking into that.
Nothing like the Irish.
So they went and they abolished all the snakes. Well, there's no snakes in Ireland. It's too cold. They meant all the snake.
That was a metaphor.
Snake. Oh, they meant all the snake
energy
practices. Well, snake is a representation of divine feminine. So any sort of divine feminine traditions were eradicated during that time.
Get rid of the witches.
I mean, maybe there are snakes there, but it's metaphorical of getting rid of the witches.
And that's one thing I love is metaphors, is looking at some of the parables in the Bible, looking at some of these the stories of history, and really saying, okay, how could this be a metaphor for either what we're going through or what we went through? And then how does that relate to my current story in my own life? And that's something we love with Speaker Academy, is like taking someone's story and making it their gift. Like take the garbage that you've been through, the journey, the walking through this trench of mud and muck, and really turn it into a gift, because it's not happened to you. It's happening for you,
Right.
and I love that.
So going back to values level 3 is the bad boy, bad girl, right? Archetype. It's also the rebel. It's the gangster. It's also the conqueror, and it's the warrior. And so there's positive aspects of that warrior energy, right? Fighting for the light. Going out there and, being an advocate, because you are like, you have something that's really important to you that you're willing to fight for.
I'll give you an example. So values level 3, where it's very powerful, is a values level 3 will take imperfect action and not care about making mistakes and failure, right? They'll get out there and just tear it up. I did this in my early days being young, getting into business, getting into real estate. Like, I didn't really think about, oh my God, what would people think of me? That's a beautiful piece of values level 3, where if you live in a very strict family growing up with the religion, you might not be able to speak your truth. You'll not be able to speak out and express yourself freely because maybe you got in trouble for that in the past. And this is something where we see a big deal in values level 4.
A lot of fear, a lot of shame,
people
and a lot of
pleasing
guilt.
and not speaking up and saying the things they want to say. And so having a little values level 3 balances that, where you might not speak out every time, but you're like, hey, this is a big, important value in my life. For what purpose are we doing this? For what purpose do I have to do this? And that's something that values level 3, what we've noticed is there's a correlation between 2 and 4, even numbers. It's the community consensus. And then 3 and 5 is the individual, and 5 is moving into business for yourself, but also like very much critical thinking. Values level 5 is like logic.
Yes. And so values level 3 needs the values level 4 humility, structure, and discipline. But the values level 4 that doesn't have values level 3 needs the action taking, not caring, and also assertion of personal power. Where values level 4 can get out of balance because there's a lot of blessings inside of values level 4. Doing the right thing just because is important for humans. Having humility is really important for humans, right? Being on the righteous path. However, if it's out of balance because there are certain things that have been programmed inside the system to disempower people.
And they're not asking those questions.
Right. If it's I am degrading myself so much because I'm unworthy in the eyes of God, or unworthy in the eyes of my family, values level 2, unworthy in the eyes of the government, right? Because the presupposition in some religious belief systems is that you come in
as a sinner,
right?
You come in disenfranchised or less than.
There's a piece of scripture, I don't know if it's the book of Thomas or book of Philip, where Jesus says that there is no sin. The only sin is actually being in a state of separation from source, right? And so that's an illusion. That's a human concept that
it's a sin.
For some people could believe that it was indoctrinated into us to then keep us stuck. Because what
does actually sin mean?
It means missing the mark.
Missing the mark.
Right.
Which means
going after the goal and failing, essentially. But there is no, because the word perfection, it means spiritual wholeness. And spiritual wholeness is by missing the mark over and over and over again and failing, and then learning from it, and then getting closer to your goal and or spiritual wholeness, which is becoming whole, right? And so it's been twisted and distorted. And so some people that are acting in values level 4 and thinking and believing and behaving that way, they're sometimes get stuck because they beat themselves up. And at the core, and I did this for a while as well.
Beat themselves up?
Yeah, they beat themselves up. They whip themselves, right?
And
they also think that they deserve at the core to be punished.
Right.
Because there's a punishing system with.
I don't know about you, but I like to make life fun, make it as efficient, as easy as possible. There's like the path of least resistance. I like to take that path.
Right.
It's a fun path.
Yeah. And so it's a system and you can learn from it. I mean, I've learned so much from that. I've learned so much from being, feeling I was not worthy. I've learned so much from beating myself up and whipping my own ass, realizing that inside that part of myself is actually trying to motivate me. It's just not the best trained, right? Now I can turn that part of myself into a coach that is a positive speaker versus a negative speaker. And going back to modal operator's necessity and impossibility, this is the world of the values level 4 language. I have to, I need to, I should, I must, I can't, I won't, it's impossible. So these are all those language
patterns. So if you're
patterns.
using that type of language, right? Think of this. Try to do yourself like an experiment or a little exercise of catching yourself saying, I have to lose weight. I need to get a better job, right? Or I must get out of debt. Think about that language, right? And if you put not in front of any of that, you're actually focused even more on it, because you can't not focus on what you don't want. If you're focused on what you don't want, you're still focused on what you don't want.
Right.
And so catch yourself doing that, right? Because it presupposes you're actually out of control with your language, which means you're out of control with something going on inside: behavior, habits, strategy, emotions, traumas, whatever it may be. The modal operators of necessity is like one of the quickest ways to get out of speaking slave language and living in this construct that you are not worthy and that you need more and you don't have enough now.
Right. So then the emergence of values level 4 into 5, or the 5 coming in from 4, religious belief systems were, because we had the empire that was from the Genghis Khans of the world, as well as Alexander the Great. All these different, the Roman Empire, all this stuff had created these massive territories. And then the infusion of different belief systems, and then we see religion start to emerge through that, right? And so then the religious world was running the world, and you said earlier in the podcast, I mean, if you healed yourself, it was God doing the healing, which is truth, but it got rigid and it got dogmatic, and it also got very corrupt.
What happened was the results weren't there.
Right.
And during the times where the potato famine and all these people got sick, like the Black Plague, all these crazy things.
And the Roman Catholic Church.
All of a sudden, people weren't healed by God, and people were like scratching their head, and they're like, is this the way we should be doing medicine? Well, and then values level 5 was born. So now science came into play to question that, which is what is such a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
Again, every single values level has pros and cons,
right? Has
light and darkness. And you're learning from both, right? It's like, you can't have the sunlight if we don't have moonlight. And it's the same thing. It's like looking at this, not in a dichotomous way, but the reason why you can quickly evolve. I believe we've evolved our relationship and our patterns and behaviors, because we really looked at, okay, what are some of the behaviors and habits we need to get rid of at values level 2, 3, 4, and 5? And what can we embrace and adopt in all those values levels that really creates the most efficient way of living and the greatest results and more success, more love and abundance and gratitude. And so that's the thing, is like 5 questioned 4 systems, right? That doesn't mean you throw out the 4 system, because you can't do that in business. You got to have systems, you got to have operations, you got to have structure, law and order. That's all values level 4, right? It's great. And people that we find that don't have some form of faith, whether it's Buddha over here, whether that's Christ, Jesus, whatever that is, Allah, right? We find that they have nothing bigger to play for either. Even if you just believe in gravity, right? Or the universal consciousness of like something made this planet, some higher power. It's a pretty exquisite system.
Well, yeah, and to think that this is the only thing out there, and we'll talk about aliens and extra.
So I'll do a quick.
By the way, all religion around the world is steeped in talking about other beings coming down, whether it be angelic beings or alien type of beings, or both.
So here's how a majority of society is living, like how you can see patterns play out and multiple values levels inside a single day, right? So let's say a guy that has a job, husband, wife, he has kids. He leaves the chief of the family, right?
Because the woman in the household is a chief sometimes, right?
Yeah, many at home.
She rules the house.
She rules the house. And so he goes, honey, I'm going to work. He gets in the car, right? On the way, the freeway, he's weaving in and out of traffic. He's like, get out of my way, flipping people off, like total road rage, right?
Values level 3.
This doesn't have to be anyone. This could be many parts of society. And I've done it as well.
Hurry the fuck up.
Get out of my way, you slow mo.
Well, if you had just given yourself some extra time, my
Exactly.
love, you
Which
wouldn't
is a
be so
valuable 3
rageful
behavior anyways.
by
Okay.
waiting to the last
So the
minute.
dutiful husband, leaving the valuable 2 structure, gets in the car, turns into valuable 3, a little bit of road rage, a little bit of anxiety, maybe a little bit of aggression.
Get the hell off my road. This is my road.
Parks.
It's my territory.
Parks in the parking lot at work. Oh, it's like
Button up the collar.
back to work, right? Hey, boss, how you doing? He comes in, right? He's just in time at 8 a.m. when the office doors open, right? And he's like, it's going to be a great day, boss. Does his work. You know, he's looking at his watch. It's like 4:45.
Or maybe
He's like,
he even
"Ooh."
takes a stop at the water cooler and gets into the drama in the
Yeah.
workplace.
Definitely could do that. That's some good valuable
valuable
4
judgment.
little judgment with the hey, how's Susie over there? Is Susie is she still not performing? Like we should
Heard
do
she
something.
hasn't been at church lately.
Yeah. And then he looks at his watch, 5 p.m. Oh God, I got to get home. Like I'm out of here. Right. See ya, boss. Great day we had. Jumps back in the car, right? Valuable 4, dutiful worker, great employee. He's showing up for his family. He's showing up for the company. Gets back in his car. You get out of my way. You know, even though it's like, and then he's like cussing at 5 o'clock traffic, right? As he's sitting there on the highway in 4-lane traffic. All of this we've all done.
My wife is going to kill me because
Yeah.
I'm late for dinner.
I'm almost late for dinner. Gets home. Hey, honey, how was your day? How are
It's
the kids? You know, and he's dutiful and maybe even sometimes submissive to his wife at home, which you could play this out as one common
Oh, by the
of
way,
being.
maybe he has in his garage a project he's working on and he's wanting to start his own business. And so that's values level 5 emerging.
Yeah. And maybe he's done this for so many years that he's getting to that point where it's like, something's different.
Yeah.
Not really loving his job anymore. Doesn't feel the value and the drive there that he used to. And so he's like, I want to start my own business. So now he's kind of opening up values level 5 a little bit, because money is more important to him. Anybody that's in a corporate job or some kind of a structured employment, contract has contemplated at some point opening up their own business if they're not happy. And if they are happy, they'll stay there forever, right? Maybe they have zero desire to run a business, and that's awesome because there's a lot of people that are like that. And that makes the system whole when it comes to capitalism and just providing for humanity. And so that's where you can see you can go from a 2 to a 3 to a 4, back to a 3, maybe back to a 2. Maybe he has an argument with somebody at work, a little bit more of a 3. Values levels is not linear.
Mm-mm.
The way to not look at this is thinking that it's a linear way.
Well, yeah. I mean, it perceives or it looks like it's linear because we're telling a history story of
Or
it.
we're
but
giving
now,
levels of numbers.
Because it's really spiraling because one recirculates into the next, into the next, into the next. So you'll see patterns of values level 3 and 5. You'll see patterns of 2 and 4 and so on and so forth. And it's not linear because now, because of technology, you could be a values level 2 in a society structured of a tribe and in the Amazon and have a smartphone to where you're watching Joe Rogan and you're hearing about all kinds of stuff all over the world, right? So that is going to shift. So we have more complexity and values in people that are actually living in a values level 2 or 3. And by the way, just because you're in America does not mean that you're not tribal. Right. Just because you're in the UK does not mean that you're not tribal at some level. We all have a core of values level 2 inside of us.
There's so many factors. We do.
Right.
We can't deny our
and
lineage.
3, we all have a rebel inside of us, whether it's active or repressed. There is a fighter and a warrior goddess and God that's inside of us, right? That can be activated in certain contexts, right?
So a lot of this teaching, it comes from, we've adapted it and kind of made even more research happen, but it's spiral dynamics. It's colors, it's numbers, it's however, you've learned it. If you've never learned this, it's very easy to learn, I think, with the numbers. But you're really asking yourself, why do you do what you do? Mm-hmm. Right? If you haven't asked yourself, why is it that I do this thing, right? This business, this job, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because it's the purpose of why you're doing it that creates, are you doing it for, like in his example, you take a professional athlete. Is he playing the sports game for money? If he's more playing it for money, then he's more thinking at a values level 5, right? If he's doing it for lineage and tradition because dad did it, grandpa did it, my brother played, and now
for legacy.
That's legacy.
Or
that's
in doing
2.
to leave behind financial legacy for my family.
And again, sometimes you do what you do because you have
or maybe you have more than one reason, right?
You have a series of values, a meatball in there where it's like, yeah, I get paid really well and I do it for my family. I also do it because I love what I do. And there's a piece to loving what you do that is values level 2, because it's in your tradition and it's so ingrained in you that you do it because you love it. And maybe you grew up doing that thing. Right. So that's an important piece to look at, is why do you do what you do? If you want to figure out your motivators, right, more deeper into values within the values levels of which you're thinking at, that's the complexities of thinking, being, doing, having. That's the behaviors, the attitudes, the emotions. That's the stuff that you can figure out how to work through. And that's the inner game.
Right. And so you saw the emergence of values level 5, think about, let's go back to that time of the dark ages, right? There was, from my perspective, corruption within inside the church. The people that were reading the scripture, most of the population could not read unless they had wealth to where they were actually taught scripture. And so there was a disconnect where people were told, and they were told what to believe and what to think, and they didn't have direct access to source. And it was a time where there was a lot of poverty and suffering. And, so whenever there's lots of poverty and suffering and sickness and plague that, sweeps across, then people start to question.
Think about that. That's like rock bottom.
Right.
When you tend to question shit when it's hitting the fan, right? And that's where it's like, hey, I thought this religion was going to help us heal during these tough times. It didn't. People are like, hey, maybe there's another way here we can help people, where science was born.
In meantime, underground, there was a lot of alchemists, even inside of the church structure. A lot of the priest may be on the side being wisdom keepers that are holding
an alchemist,
holding
an occultist,
on lineage from the ancient wisdom that had been perhaps burned in. There's always a fire, right?
A great fire.
Whenever there's a new thing that comes in, we burn the old and justify it because those people are heathens, right?
That's metaphorical and literal.
That's what we did. And America.
We're going to have to do
South
on a podcast.
America.
We're going to have to do an episode on the history of hypnosis.
Right.
Because and we teach this in our trainings, because the history of hypnosis was actually one of the first true means of medicine. And these were scientists. These were physicists. They were alchemists.
They were healers.
They were healers. They were even, some of them were musicians, because they were playing with tunes, frequencies, sounds, vibrations. So it's fascinating when you look at the history and how far we've come.
And they were occultists as well.
And we're talking just like the last 300 to 500 years.
Yes. And all that knowledge is nothing new. This is why we call this ancient wisdom with modern mastery.
It's not new.
So, if you start looking into ancient traditions around the world of, the Vedic texts, if you're looking at the Mayan tradition, the Hawaiian tradition, the Egyptian tradition, they all have, even in the Jewish Bible and the Torah and in Christian tradition too, it all talks about, it's quantum physics. It's all talking about the birth of creation. It's metaphorical, but it's talking about advanced science and string theory and the creation of this universe. And everything that there ever is and will be is already inside of us.
Is already here.
So all of this information was, from our perspective, kept alive and well just in the darkness, because if you brought any of this information up, you would then be called a witch,
quackery.
It was heresy. So because you couldn't question the main doctrine.
Off with his head.
Right. And so there's a lot of people that died during that time. I mean, look at the burning of the witches. I mean, anytime that you're
thousands of them, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions, as she says.
And it gives me the chills all over my body that if you are a woman that, speaks your truth or is good at healing with medicine and herbs and stuff like that, it was you named a witch and you're killed. And men were too.
It
wasn't just women.
Understand how you were doing the healing, right? If it wasn't closer to this religious construct, or it wasn't, it
was competition,
a pure herbal method or nutrition somehow, like they thought you were a witch. And if you were dealing with energy or some kind of channeling, like throw that out. We got to burn this person.
And then Galileo, I mean, he got burned at the stake because he was, heaven forbid that we say that we're not the center of the universe.
and Joan of Arc, I mean, she was burned at the stake because she was a witch. She knew sorcery, and sorcery is energy. And I think this is fascinating because the more you learn about quantum physics and quantum alchemy, the less you realize you know. I mean, it just expands your thinking and it to beyond the universe. And if energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just transmutes.
Yeah.
That is the key to healing. And that's the key to health and wealth right there. It's like, we're just transmuting energy. I think I heard Jocko Willett say this. Like, he was like, when some shit comes up, because he was a Navy SEAL, it's like a new obstacle comes up. He's like, good, right? You get an obstacle in your business, money problem, financial issue. You're like, good.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be good that comes from the pile of shit that just confronted you. And what we do in our society is, because we don't know how to transmute that energy right away, we instantly damn it. We cuss at it for a little while. We get in a shitty state, spiral down. Before you know it, we're on the phone with our friends saying, woe is me. And then we wonder why we're creating emotions with low frequency, low vibration around depression, sadness, hurt, guilt, shame, rage. Instead, how can we transmute this energy? And once we realize we can transmute it, we can transform it. And everybody's looking for transformation, but we're not figuring how the first step before you transform is transmutation.
Right.
That is the key.
And I find it fascinating because this is my speculation. So back in the UK and King Henry, right? So there was a huge scandal where at that time, you know, the Roman Catholic Church was part of the religion, but it was also, they would deem whoever was the king and queen ordained by God. And King Henry at the time was married to a Spanish queen. I forget her name. And he wanted the freedom to have divorce.
He basically wanted poly.
Yeah, well, he wanted to be able to,
in a way.
He wanted to marry Anne Boleyn.
Oh yeah.
And so this beautiful,
divorce and remarry.
beautiful goddess.
But he was with all kinds of women.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's quite the scandal. But anyways, so the church wouldn't give it to him, right? And this is during the time of Values Level 4. So like, no, you're not allowed to break a marriage. And so he then then he said, kind of F you to the church, and then he broke off and divorced Queen. I think it's Queen Elizabeth. No, it's go look at it. Look at the history. And then he married Anne Boleyn, but then later on he ended up saying that she was a witch and all this stuff and chopped her head off. But their children,
but that's not the point.
Their children, but the breaking of the stronghold of politics.
He's kind of the one who broke that veil.
He broke, and that during which time Martin Luther and the Protestant movement, and so it started breaking open the stronghold of the Roman Catholic Church at the time, which was the main thing at the time. It was the cat's meow, right? And so during which time it then brought in other opportunities. And then after that, so his daughter, after a shuffle, eventually Queen Elizabeth, that never got married, that she was known as the Virgin Queen, who she was also connected to Da Vinci, and it was during the time of Shakespeare. So all of this was happening. I get the chills all over my body. And then the Medicis that were, connected with Shakespeare, or not Shakespeare, but Da Vinci. So all of this was happening, this turbulence. But at the time, you were like, oh my gosh, it's so much chaos. What's going on? But because of that, that was the emergence of the Enlightened period. Because of that, that's where science moved through, and alchemy started to have a presence. And because of that, then there was the ability to have freedom and creativity. And there was a boom of art that came through during that time. And because of that, there was an awakening. And because of that, then later on, that's where you see Values Level 5 truly emerging through science, and then later on technology, and so on and so forth.
And I think that's something that is actually, it can be, I mean, obviously Deb and I are married, and I love our relationship and I love our marriage. And to think though that so many different religious constructs out there, like really, they prop the marriage agreement up, but then they condemn it if you were to get out of it, right? Or divorce. It's very frowned upon on many religions, which is fascinating because it's like, you can always remake your life. You can rebuild. And I think this is something that some people are feeling trapped right now in a marriage or in a relationship if you're not married, and you don't feel like you can get out. And the reality is it's kind of what we're seeing also with people's health. They don't know how to get back to healthy, right? They've let their body go for so long. If you're in a career, you're in a job and you cannot stand it and you hate it, do what you love, right? Because to me, that is what we're battling with, is like, again, forced choice dichotomy. Do I stay married, unhappy, unhealthy, miserable, Or do I divorce and like deal with the shame and the guilt of what people will think of me if I leave this marriage and rebuild and have to start dating again?
And on the other side too, then some people are going to the far end of the spectrum where they don't respect the sanctity of marriage, and they, you know, go through it just like it's not a big deal too. So
Sure.
there's both sides of that, right?
Exactly.
And it's beautiful to look at all that, the contrast. And I love the conversation of how you can come in from 1,000 different perspectives and you're
Right.
all right. And that's one thing about values level 4 is that so this is a trap people get in, is that because you made a commitment, you can never unbreak that
You
commitment.
cannot break the commitment.
Right.
And
But
we're
that's
all
not
about
the way values level 5 thinks, right?
And we're not all about breaking agreements. We're not breaking commitments.
Right.
At the end of the day, though, if there's a commitment that is not ultimately empowering your abilities, your love, your light.
Because it doesn't give you room for evolution. Just because you committed to something in the past doesn't mean that it is still functional for you
Think about
now.
that promise. Think about that agreement.
Commitment?
The commitment.
Right.
If it's not empowering and it's not empowering your light and your love,
staying there and suffering, which
is
is
it
a values
working
level
for
4
you?
concept, to stay and suffer.
And I go back to values level 5, thinking is like, well, is it getting a result?
Right.
Yeah, it's getting a result, one that I'm not happy with. It's like, and a values level 5, what's great about values level 5 profit and entrepreneurship is the industrial revolution truly was like built on values level 5, values level 4, right? Values level 5s were out there trying to think 5 thinking, right? We're like, oh, we're going to, build a railroad across the country. We're going to drill for oil, like all these things that started, in the early 1900s,
Well, it's also,
late 1800s.
I remember we talked about yesterday, like the Freemasons and whoever was here to then create America. America was supposedly the new Atlantis, right? And it was a rejection of the tyranny, the corruption
from the king and queen over in Europe
of the monarch, but then also the church and the religious systems.
What's fascinating that people don't realize, we left the persecution to come right here
and then recreate it.
And we didn't learn that lesson of like, we had so much. Think about our ancestors that hit Ellis Island.
Great idea, but poor execution.
We had so much rage, so much anger, hatred, all these negative emotions. We turned around and did it to the native indigenous people here. Like, forget about that.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Forget about that. That's their land. Let's put a railroad through it. Let's conquer the land. Let's develop. Let's
call
build.
them heathens because they're not Catholic.
Because they don't understand.
Or Protestant.
Yeah, they're not reading our book.
Yeah.
And the key is like, again, looking at this from 2 different angles of like this forced choice dichotomy, like such beautiful times in the Industrial Revolution. We had steel factories, we had workers. Henry Ford built the assembly line that cranked out from taking 14 days or 14 hours to build a car down to like 60 seconds, 2 minutes, something like that, 90 minutes, 90 seconds, right? So we had all this beautiful birth of inventions and creativity and wealth, but then we also did something that was very unspiritual-like and unloving-like and very unreligious-like, which is killing and brutalizing native people. So it's like, and not getting plugged into that, but learning from it.
Right.
Right. And obviously, it's awful what we did to the native people. If you watch the show 1883, I think it is.
Oh my goodness.
That's a pretty accurate depiction of what I've read.
Whatever the one is,
1883,
1926 or
1923, something like that.
Yeah.
Just like the same
the boarding schools that they would put them in, these religious boarding schools, and
the same writer as Yellowstone.
Oh my goodness.
Great shows.
Great shows.
It really gives you compassion for what we have here. For me, I watch this, I'm like, gosh, it's like I felt for the people.
It happened to the Hawaiians. It also happened in Mexico as well as in the Peru.
And this is where I go back to history of patterns. We keep doing this.
Yeah, let's grow up.
And can we learn from these fuck ups? Like, can we learn from these mistakes? Like, holy mackerel.
And going back to original Jesus teachings from my perspective,
Christ
is that
consciousness.
He was loving and kind to everyone, right? He accepted everyone, right? As long as you came from a place of love. And so we have to ask ourselves, is our behavior truly being Christian or religious,
and
or
all
whatever
of that,
the belief system is?
All of what we're talking about can be looked at
love?
From values levels.
Right.
Are we conquering because it's values level 3, brute force, kill the other side, kill the competition, right? Or are we looking at it from values level 5? Well, I want to make more money. We want to make this organization profitable. And if we do a little VL3 to get our VL5 thinking, so be it.
Yeah, because 5 is all about business, right? It's all about getting as much profit and resources as you possibly can.
Yep.
Like the values level 3 and 2 is connection to the land and territory, right? Or essentially for the tribe and or the family, and power. Values level 5 is profit, power through profit. And so the unconscious part of 5 is the corporate interests that literally have more rights than human beings. That have corrupted our governments and our religious institutions. And they use values level 3 mercenaries to do their killing.
To do their bidding.
The cartel, right?
So the values level 4, some, not all, it's not, evolution, by the way, is not guaranteed, right? Some people are just happy living exactly the way they're living. And that's perfectly fine. I think like we don't want to change people that don't want to change. Leave that be. If it's not broken, don't fix it. If they don't think they need something worked on or enhanced.
Who are we to say that what they're doing is not as good as what we're doing?
I'm not the negative emotions police. So a values level 4, at some point, maybe if they're not happy in their job, they're miserable doing what they do because they're not fulfilled. They're not passionate about it. They may wake up one day and say, I've been making this boss all this money. To hell with this company. I'm going to go start my own. I do all the work anyways. That's what a values level 4 will say when they're like miserable, right? And then they'll start their own business, right? And that's the birth of values level 5, which is it's such a beautiful evolution. Think about it. You're taking responsibility for how you make money, the people you hire. You get to be your own boss. Right? You get to figure it out. And so that's what we're getting into now. Is values level 5 is very much entrepreneurship, profit. It's science, it's testing, right? Like all the funnel guys, we're testing, we're creating conversions. It's all like test the landing pages, test the copy, test the offer price.
It also is very much left brain, logical thinking. Mind is God. I am God. I am superior. Right?
I'm so smart. I can think my way out of the box.
I can think out of everything. And another thing that's really fascinating about values level 5, it's the birth of materialism. So it's rejecting everything spiritual because that didn't get a result. And that's suffering, right?
And values level 4 may say, you know what? I don't really have a whole lot. I'd like to make more money one day.
Yeah. I'm tired of suffering. I want it now. And I want to have
house.
all the things that I want. And I want to have the 3 boats. And I want to go on all the vacations. And I want to have all of that freedom now.
Yeah.
And so,
because the values level 4, the company will say, you stay with us for 35 years.
You get a gold watch.
You're going to get a gold watch.
Or a plaque on the wall. Go-hoo.
You're going to retire with the bennies. Ooh,
the bennies.
The pension.
So then I've had all my life force energy sucked out of me for a job that I hate because I'm doing the right thing to provide for my family. And now I don't even have energy to be able to enjoy my retirement.
Right.
That's really what happens for most people.
There's some recent stories that we've come across where, the values level 4 was with the company doing their thing for decades, retired, cancel clear to leave.
Cancel clear.
Passed away within 60 days of retiring.
Right.
Which is fascinating in a culture of itself. It's like, oh, I'm going to stop. Right. It's almost like when you retire, that's got a lot of meaning behind that word, by the way. I don't like saying
and
it.
And by the way, all of this is designed from our perspective that, this whole being on the hamster wheel of like having to work all the time, that's a values level 5, but 4 installation into 4.
Sure.
To then keep people working, right? And that's been indoctrinated into our school systems through the Rockefellers. And don't get me started on that.
It's a way of motivating
workers
people.
For people.
Yeah, I mean, Rockefeller said we're going to create
an army.
We want an army of worker bees.
Right.
We want a society of workers, not thinkers and doers. And that's where you're in this contrast and this dichotomy yet again of like, do I stay doing what I'm doing or am I meant for more? And that's the question to ask yourself.
A perfect example of values level 3-5 is in the movie in 1923. Where he's kind of like a Rockefeller archetype. He's oil, he does mining and all that stuff. And he's coming over to Montana and he's around this big table of all these gentlemen that are super rich because they're all into the railroad or whatever. The booming America. And he's talking about, and now we're going to sell to them a lifestyle. Right? Which was the first.
Because he saw the guys skiing down this barely powdered mountain of snow. And he's like, what is that?
And we're going to make more profit than we've ever made.
Whatever that is,
we're going to sell it.
He's like, I want that because we're going to sell the experience. And talk about Values
Exactly.
Level 5. That is such Values Level 5 is like, we're going to sell the experience. We're going to sell the lifestyle, which there's beauty in that.
Yes, and we're grateful for it.
We're
I love
so grateful.
technology. I love this comfy home. I love these chairs we're sitting in. I love going on vacation. I love making money and
Travel,
having
adventure.
fun and having experience. And
We
so
love impacting people's lives.
there's so much goodness. And the way that Values Level 5 getting out of alignment, remember, too far to the extreme is that it's profit over people, it's profit over planet, and it's get disconnected to what we're doing this for in the first place. So here's a perfect example. So there's a story of a guy, Values Level 5, right? Very rich man. He, has been working his ass off, multimillionaire, perhaps higher up in the corporate world, or maybe he owns a business. He goes on vacation and he's sitting, let's say Bali, and he's sitting on the beach with this fisherman, casting the rod and just having a really good time being in the moment.
Just catching fish.
Right?
Off the dock.
And he starts talking to this fisherman of this gorgeous little village. It's like, this is great.
So great. I get to do this every day. Fish. What a life I have.
Yeah. And he's like, man, that's amazing. He's like, but don't you want more?
He's like, have you ever thought of
Turning this into a business?
Buying a boat and then, getting some employees and take people out and go do like a fishing charter
and then
business.
You could like build a resort here.
Build
and
a resort.
All this stuff. And
he's like, eventually you make enough money, you can have 6 or 7 boats and then more employees. And you've got this thriving business. And he's like, to turn around and do what?
He's like,
fish all day and drink a beer.
He's like, but I'm doing that right now.
Like, but I'm doing that right now. That's a great shadow aspect of Values Level 5.
It's like you're doing all this.
Why do we do all this just for money?
Right.
And it reminds me of real estate. Like you get to the point where you're just grinding out, hustle, hustle, hustle. You're making money and you go like, okay, cool. I'm making money, but what is all this for? More shit, more cars, more
inside.
houses. Like that's where I came up against like, there's got to be something more to this life.
Exactly.
And if you're asking yourself that same question, I think it's a beautiful question to ask.
And so consumerism actually comes from Values Level 5 because Values Level 5 is control of spend. It's control of propaganda.
Here's a classic Values Level 5 thing happening right now. You can go to Home Depot and they already have Christmas shit out.
Oh, yeah.
You can go to Walmart and they already have Christmas stuff out. Right. Like Christmas trees, wreaths, presents. Buy. Remember it's crazy. Like every year I feel like we're like increasing another week like into the summer. And like I've seen stuff in August where it's like, oh my God, they really bringing out Christmas shit already?
Remember that one
That's a
commercial?
5 thing,
by the way, commercials and the whole media, like the news, the old news paradigm, totally run by Values Level 5. And they found out that they can, first of all, fear porn people to then get them into a place where they can slide in suggestions to then create the problem. There's a problem, there's a reaction, and then there's solution type of mindset. And we'll talk about that.
Years ago, there was a video of compilation of like multiple different news stations, all different, right? Fox, blah, 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 whatever. Right. Don't even want to mention them. And it was like this year, you're going to want to feel like you're going to want to give 3, 4, 5, or 7 gifts. And then the next one was like, friends are coming over. Family is, 3, 4, 5, 7 gifts.
They just keep repeating the same thing.
And it's like, you can't go to a party without a gift.
Right.
Presents are the key to holiday spirit. Right?
So that is the product.
And we're not knocking the spirit of gifts or buying shit. We love to do it.
And credit cards are fantastic.
We want people to be aware of what they're doing and the decisions they make. Is it from their own critical lens, their own critical thinking, their own intuition, their own decisions, their own potential, right? Or is it because they're hypnotized by something outside of them that's like, do. Which the reality is we're all hypnotizing each other.
Exactly.
We're all hypnotizing each other into success, abundance, wealth, gratitude, love, health. Or we're hypnotizing ourselves out of all that beauty.
And again, Values Level 5 is still looking unconsciously to have wholeness. Remember we talked in Values Level 4 is that, they feel like they're unworthy. Well, I believe that's a neurodriver inside of all of us that's begging our soul to grow and evolve to then become more holy. And so when we're not connected to source energy, God, higher self, spirit, soul, whatever, there's an emptiness inside. There's a restlessness that you're trying to fill this void. And so I think values level 5 is a unconscious version of that, but it's manifesting in materialism versus spiritualism and spiritual purity. And so this is another thing that you see in values level 5 is that the plastic surgery industry, this is a huge example of values level 5 on steroids.
Speak it.
And there's nothing wrong with plastic surgery. If that's your thing, totally fine. And there's a lot of marketing that's involved of telling you that you are not worthy unless you look a certain way.
You're not good enough.
So you're not good enough. You're not whole. You're not holy. And because we're not connected, a lot of us are not spiritually evolving ourselves on a daily basis. I got into that trap because I felt that I was disgusting and wasn't good enough. And I had major body dysmorphia. And so it was really easy for me to make that jump to then get breast implants to feel better about myself. But then I still broke it inside. And then it becomes addictive because then you get the boobs and then you get, perhaps some people go and get the butt and then you're getting the lip injections.
You don't
or
know
whatever
when to stop is basically, it's
right,
like, when
because
do you end that?
It's feeding this emptiness because it's been installed into the consciousness that in order to be worthy, looking a certain way is necessary versus in order to become worthy, you develop yourself internally and then externally that you will shine. And the physical will not be so important when the metaphysical is attended to.
And there's kind of a correlation there with certain religious constructs.
Yeah.
You're not worthy in the eyes of God unless XYZ.
Yeah, there's a huge correlation between that too. And from my
like
perspective,
you're a sinner until you're not, right?
Right.
And that's, I just want to tie
there's
that
a
together.
definite correlation between the two. So
And values level 5 is definitely
making a lot of money on
they're
it.
definitely leaning into that pretty hard.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it. Look, especially for like someone that has a horrible accident or a burn, cancel, clear,
Right.
delete, like that you've had something that happened to you, you needed facial construction because you just wanted to look back to the way you did. I think that's a beautiful thing. If that helps get somebody their confidence back and they can get rid of scars, by all means, I'm like, yeah, if that helps someone feel better and helps them release the trauma of whatever that accident was, do it. Where values level 5 is on steroids right now is corporate tiering. We have shell companies within shell companies that own other companies. And right now we have corporate 500 companies that literally they all own a piece of each other. Profit over people, profit over the employees, shareholders over the rest of the team, right? I'll give you a great example. Jeff Bezos back in the 90s was able to get sales tax completely down to zero because it was one of the first online companies that you could purchase from and have goods and products shipped to you, which I think is fascinating. Because then they came back around and it was like, now he's like back into basically there are Amazon stores, physical locations, which is like every other store pays sales tax, right? And so to try to, again, what a values level 5 will do, they'll use attorneys, they won't break the law, but they will bend it in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
That's the shadow aspect of values level 5 is when you're breaking people and hurting people and creating this frequency and energy
They'll
around.
rewrite, so they get lawyers involved to rewrite the laws. That's
rewrite
the
the laws or make their own laws, and that's what's happening. So here's the other values, the other power play right now with values level 5, especially is values level 5 corporations and people, powerful people are corrupting values level 4 government.
Yeah.
And they're saying, hey, I've got this product and everybody needs it. And we need to create a mandate so everybody uses it. And then the Congress people and the little politicians are like,
yep.
They get to work. Enhance. Enhance. And then they create a law or they create some bullshit fucking thing.
That's not for the people.
That's not for the people
It's for
because
profit
they're getting a pad.
or control.
They're getting little pads in their pocket and then both people win. And so what we're seeing, and this is not just the US, this has been going around for years.
Yeah.
I mean, at least Mexico's corruption is right on the table.
Mm-hmm. Or they create false flags to then end up pushing a military behind to then validate their purpose, which is the same thing
and
that
the other
they did
thing
before.
to go into that, if you know values level 5 is something that there is a lot of focus with powerful people in all these nations and most of this planet, one of the reasons why we still have so much war is because of values level 5.
Yeah.
Because the industrial complex, the military complex, not the industrial, the military complex and the defense budget is just growing. And it has to grow because they keep spending more money.
Then the black budget.
And they're selling more stuff to create more equipment, munitions, arms, all the technology that goes into having a war, a legitimate war. And so this is the key to understanding this. It's like, we've got to be like, I'm not going to throw out values level 5 in my life.
No,
folks.
business is empowering.
Business actually
being an entrepreneur is
impact.
empowering because it gives you freedom.
Can you imagine if we didn't have entrepreneurship or some form
and it's
of
creativity?
Business?
Think about it.
Inventions, right? When you look at the top 10 inventions, barbed wire, the telephone, the xylophone, I think it was. When you look at the 10 inventions, like that was all values level 5 creations, right? Castex balm tea is how I remembered it with my grandfather. I know them all. I just can't remember
Teflon,
right now.
which is terrible for people.
But like all of these inventions happened out of values level 5 thinking. So
Right.
we don't throw out values
So
level 5.
we could create positive. So this is the thing. So the same thinking with conscious values of 6 and 7 and beyond could create inventions that are for the people and for the planet that actually could save money and give the money back to the people, right? And
because
so
like contribution, right? Contribution is a beautiful thing that really, I mean, you could look at it as a values level 4 thing, but it's really a values level 5 thinking, because you make so much money, you can now create a nonprofit or give money to a nonprofit or just straight up donate givingly, unwillingly. Just you give and you don't expect this return back, right?
So
that's
another
the
thing
beautiful piece to values level 5.
So another thing that shadow aspect of 5, or it is just an interesting phenomenon, is because that it's rejecting the church. A lot of times the values inside of 5 is that there is no God. So it could manifest as atheism, not always. Or they just believe that they are God and they have the right to the planet to then do whatever they want. And this is also the question of AI and technology, like some of the things that Kurzweil says, very much, Kurzweil.
Yeah.
Google dude, total values level 5, values in terms of,
like the way he's thinking about AI,
right?
Like we have to join it.
There is no God. So therefore, and we are playing God, creating this technology that then is going to allow us to achieve everlasting light, which is this life, which is essentially a recycling of values level 4, but then inside of 5. So God got it wrong, so we're going to do it ourselves, kind of situation.
Right.
So just be thinking
We're
about
playing
like
God.
We are
in
playing
other
God,
words, or at least not.
And
us,
that's where we're getting into values level 7 and beyond, where we're
others.
talking about robotics, genetics, nanotechnology, and GRIN, which is values level 7 and 5.
GRIN technology is genetics, robotics, information, and nanotechnology,
and transhumanism. So that's the birth of 5 and 7.
Intelligence.
Right? So values level 5. Again, out of balance is not good, but then values level 5 with conscious values are really fantastic.
And that's where this 4 and 5, what we're doing is helping people make that leap from 4 to 5, because it's a hard leap to make. Everything you were doing for a company that you work for, or with a license or the system, if you're going to make this leap, you now have to do it yourself, right? You have to think
be
for
the
yourself.
Marketer. Being self-motivated.
You have to be the salesperson.
You don't need somebody telling you what to do, or
you have to be the leader.
Getting, having consequences for not showing up for work. So that structure internally needs to be in place, and having
think of the
discipline.
Think of that mindset, the discipline of, right? Instead of just showing up, whether you do a good job or not, most people want to do a good job because they have purpose and fulfillment. But at the end of the day, you don't have to show up and you get paid. That's the difference of values level 4. You're going to get paid whether you love your job or not, whether you love your customers or not. And I'm not knocking on values level 4 thinkers, because there's people that are great.
That is actually going away in a lot of ways because of the shuffling of companies and everything that's happening. Because we have friends that are inside a corporate world right now, and they are working unbelievable, terrible reality.
You're living this miserable,
right? Which is going to give birthplace of values level 5.
Think about the early 90s. I mean, like those factories were like terrible working conditions. Right? So
people are rebellious against
what's funny is like people are like, yeah, but it wasn't what it was back in the 1900s. Yeah, it's like, but it's just as stressful. If not, it may not be the physical stress. Well, it is, but it's also the emotional stress. Like people don't look at the mental and emotional stress of like going into that,
which is going to create a revolution.
The job every day.
And then technology taking away all these jobs too.
Think about values level 4 thinking. You got the company policy manual, you got the bylaws, right? When to show up, when to leave, what to do, how to do it, your role. When you make that leap to 5, you don't have any of that because as an entrepreneur, you have to build that. You have to create what that is that this company already did. So you've got to be the salesperson, the leader, the marketer, the promoter, the deliverable, right? The person who actually does the manufacturing, does the shipping or whatever, creates product design, produces the service. And so what's fascinating is like, this is the thing that we love helping, is because this is a beautiful lift in consciousness. It's also a beautiful up level in the way one thinks. That's not to say we're going to throw away values level 4 thinking and values. You got to have structure and process, because if you're going to be a values level 5 leader and go create a company, guess what you're going to do? You're going to hire values level 4s.
Again,
so now
take
you
the
get
best
to
and
see
leave the
both
rest.
sides of that fence.
Right.
And
it's integrating of the healthy values in each system and then becoming more flexibility in behavior.
so it's embracing values that are totally foreign to you, totally new to you as a values level 4 corporate person, right? We're helping doctors and practitioners and health coaches do this because, you know, just because you get the degree and the license, great. Now you've got the ability to go help people heal. That doesn't mean you're going to build a successful business, because there's totally different ideas. There's new skills, there's new modes of thinking. And again, habits, behaviors, patterns, skills that need to be adopted in order to be successful at that next jump, right? And then you get to the point where we've done this. So now you've got values level 5, you're making all this money. You start to go, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I don't even want this business anymore. I want to sell it.
Right, because you've been chained to having to make all this money to then pay for all the cars and to have this amazing life that you don't even enjoy anymore because you work so hard because you're...
And you've got the money, you got the cars, but maybe you don't have the relationship.
Yeah, or your health is down the tube.
Maybe you have the wealth, but you don't have your health.
Right.
Right?
And you also feel empty inside. This is what somebody sells their company for millions of dollars or billions of dollars, and they're like, I don't even know who I am.
And there's a void. There's a void there where you're like, I'm trying to fill it, right? And maybe more money, more cars, more houses, whatever it is, isn't filling the void.
When it's feeling isolated,
and
really.
That's, again, there's an indicator, our change state indicator. Every time there is a rock bottom moment, things start to really shift. And that's the indication that you're either up against the boundaries of a values level mode of thinking, and you're either going to move forward and traverse it, or you're going to basically decline and maybe fall back into the next lower values level thinking, which either one is, sometimes you have to actually go down to go up, depending on where you are and how, you know, your situation.
And so this is where a lot of times people, again, right? So that you doing values level 4, you're in this relationship, you're sacrificed for the family, you don't even know who you are anymore or what you want. This is where the person also looks in the mirror and is like, I don't even know what I want anymore. Like, what am I doing this all for?
What's all of this for? So you go
like,
back
what does
to
this mean?
You go back to the question is,
right?
Why do I do all this?
Why do I do this?
Why is it
What's
that
the purpose of all this? What's the purpose of life?
Why do I want
because
this?
Again, values level 5, a lot of times have thrown out spirituality. If they full on did like hard values level 5 and went to the far end of that spectrum. And so like, what does this all mean? What do I, like, what is there that's bigger? So now they're looking back to source energy, right?
They're opening
They're
up.
looking back to oneness, but not from a place of religion per se, not looking for a guru to tell them what to think or do that's in a closed system. They're not looking for religion per se, unless they're going back and cycling through religion. So we see a lot of people that had left religion and then they now are back in religion because there's stuff for them to learn and transform inside of that structure, right? And so there's no right or wrong. But a lot of times this is where you see the business owner go down to India and staying in an ashram, but not putting the guru on the pedestal and saying that this is the only way, just learning these different modalities.
I mean, literally that's what a full on, very like successful values level 5 is like. They feel the void. They come up against the health issue. They sell everything, or they, you know,
I don't need all this
they
stuff.
Move the business into a trust. Somebody else runs it.
They'll go down and do like 3 rounds of ayahuasca.
They go do their spiritual path down in Peru or India, or, you know, or Tibet, right?
They go live up in a mountain.
And you have enough money that you don't have to work. So like money
Dave Asprey talks about this, of where he went up,
Dave
and that's
does.
where he came up with Bulletproof
And so money is no
coffee.
longer important, right? Money is like not their focus at all. It's maybe the relationship, because they've been married, divorced, and they really seek that
because they don't need the money. They have the money.
Maybe it's health, right? Maybe it's a relationship health, or maybe it's just finding fulfillment.
Or just finding inner peace and oneness with source,
Inner
right?
peace is huge.
And so
then they go on this sabbatical.
And they go meditate.
Right. And then, you know, they take a year, 2, 3 years to go find themselves. And now values level 6 is opening up. Yeah, and by the way, we go through, a lot of people are going through this values level 6 mode right now. They're finding this kind of
like, I don't know who I am.
They may not be able
to find myself. I want to go travel.
Yeah. They may not be able to like just not work forever again. Like maybe they don't have maybe they didn't fully actualize values level 5 in a way that literally affords them the ability to never work again. But they're going like through what I call kind of like these like mini vacations, but they're like mini retirements if you were to say it, which I don't like that word anyways, but they're basically saying, I'm going to go and take a year off, right? We just met a friend that he literally took a year and 2 or 3 months and took his motorcycle all over the world.
Big real estate broker, great, did very well for himself.
That was like his values level 6 kind of like, I'm going to go do this for me.
Right.
Like that I thought was
spiritual
super
journey.
cool. It's like a spiritual journey, right? And so the values level 5 is up against this and says, there's got to be more to life, more than all this stuff that I have.
It has to be another way.
And now their values level 6 is birthed open, and they're looking for spirituality. They're looking for consciousness. They're like, they want to learn more about the planet. They want to know like, what is this world that I'm currently living in, and who am I inside of it?
So that's how it happens inside the individual. But really, we didn't see the birthing of values level 5 in history until the 60s, right? The flower child movement, right?
Yeah, psychedelics.
And
LSD.
it's also, it was an aversion and reaction to, a lot of it was personal power around women. That was fueling part of that, and also sexuality, expansion of consciousness. But it also was a rejection of these forever wars, talking about the 60s and the forever wars. And that was the effect, the cause and effect that caused people to rebel against the system again. Another way of looking at values level 5 emergence as well, that values level 6 emergence from 5 is very much 5 was created and founded upon Newtonian physics, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at the medical system, which is values level 5 on steroids, with inside of a 4 structure, medicine was coming from the presupposition from the material world. We're just a biological meat suit. There's no consciousness per se that has to do with medicine. And so as an effect, or as a effect of the cause of that getting totally out of balance and really not getting the best results for people's health. I mean, the health system that we have right now in the United States is horrific. It's sick care.
But you notice what they've done is, from a values level perspective, look at this way. Values level 2, what was beautiful about indigenous ways and cultures is they knew how to heal. And then values level 6 is spiritual, working in rhythm and balance with nature. And so being aligned with nature, right? And having more holistic rituals and practices and ways of healing the body naturally.
Which is bringing back the ancient wisdom and integrating it into modern mastery.
What we're really doing is we're integrating values level 2, values level 6, spirituality, and, planet consciousness, which is really our environment, which we get a lot of beautiful natural remedies and tinctures from our environment, our planet. And what we've done is we've disconnected the human being from that and made them think that values level 5, that you have to take something outside of you, which there's nothing wrong with supplements and things like that. But if you don't have a prescription medication or drug, that you are not going to be healed. You're not going to be whole or healthy.
Which is interesting because it's really just all about managing symptomology. And that's why people that are taking pharmaceuticals usually have 7 to 10 to 15 different pharmaceuticals they're taking to then, counterbalance whatever the side effects of these things.
Now,
and they're making money off of people.
They're making profit over people. In other words, they're okay with putting out a piece of drug or a drug or a medicine out there that actually could cause harm to someone. And if they lose a few people's lives in that process, they're okay with that because they say it's all about the greater population of people. But it's like so fascinating that you could literally say that in the same sentence, that you're like, it's okay if we lose a few to save everyone.
And this is another conversation, the chemicals in our food system and the toxic soup that we live on every single day. This is the effect of values level 5 on steroids, not caring about what they put in stuff. So after the war, after World War II, they had all of these chemicals and or factories that were providing for the war complex. And so
they needed to recycle these products.
And so they started putting in our food.
Materials. And
Look it up. Or they made pharmaceutical medicine through it. And so it's just recycling of how do we capitalize, make more profit. And it's not like they're trying to kill people. And maybe they are. Some of them people think that there's a population management control, ideology that's floating around, which is possible. But I think a lot of it.
In the late 40s and early 50s, that's when they became all these chemicals. Think about this. Vats of chemicals are sitting around after World War II. And they're like, we need to sell this product.
Fluoride in the water.
And so they started doing weird fluoride stuff, but they also started selling it to the farmers for mass production because they said, we need to feed the world. We need to feed the planet. And so they said the war is no longer against Russia or Europe or Germany
now
or
it's
whoever.
Hunger.
Now the war is against insects and weeds and insecticides and pesticides. And so that's truly what we started doing with these byproducts. And people need to really research this is like, is that the best thing we could be putting on our seeds, on our crops, on our food, let alone that we're doing monocrop, but it's like, it's destroying and killing our soil.
Right.
And that's something that we need to really get serious about because that is killing the planet. And so that's a values level 6 and 2. And so how did these indigenous ways, how did they live for so long? Right? How do they live in balance and in harmony with nature? Right? And yet we are completely, as a society in a whole, right? You may be one of these people that goes out like us and goes for a walk every day, goes
gets
out,
their feet grounded,
get
gets
into
sunshine.
nature, right? We're all about nature, love nature,
Right.
hike, camp, bike, whatever you have fun with, ski, get into the lakes. And it's like, how are we so disconnected from nature?
Because we've been sold that you are happy when you live in a cubicle inside of a, stacked apartment. Not that there's anything wrong with apartments, right? But like the ideology that screens is the way to be and disconnected and putting your feet on the ground is not the way to be. And it's so interesting because the more that we could get back to our roots, get sun on our face, get in cold water, get some exercise, movement, be in nature, get our feet on the ground, and then eat clean food, all of the dis-ease in the world, a lot of it would disappear.
It would totally disappear, which would just be a values level shift.
Right.
Right.
But values level 5 has so much investment in having a pharmaceutical system. You got
to keep the hamster wheel rolling.
Right.
And you realize like majority, like if we take the average income majority of us make, let's just say in the US, 50% of our income goes to like harvesting what we do. It goes to a municipality water bill. It goes to a mortgage or rent. It goes to food. Like they're literally harvesting 50% of our energy, which is fascinating when you really think about it. Like how much money we spend or invest every year to just live, which is totally not in balance with nature because we're concrete jungles and all the things, but it's nice to have things, right? But this is just some questions is like, how's this working for you?
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but then just complete pure consuming without any thought of how that's going to have ecology, meaning of the effect, the ripple effect of humans as well as all the animals and all of the plants and the planet. This is something that values level 6 stands for. And it's so amazing because the effect of this was, we went from Newtonian physics to quantum physics, right? Which then started to explain and give a container for most people to understand these ancient teachings that have been around since the beginning of time, right? And, it started to bring science behind it so people can actually listen to it. And so the New Age movement of healing, like the new medicine, energetic medicine, all bringing back the Chinese, Ayurvedic tradition and all of this rebirthing of the old into the new from a science perspective is values level 6.
And it's ancient wisdom.
And the granola movement where like you're eating healthy food and eating healthy like food from the land. But then because it became a trend, from my perspective, it also got very much hijacked by values level 5, where they started, Whole Foods. Now you can walk through the aisles of Whole Foods as Trader Joe's, and all the stuff that's in boxes is full of shit. It's just packaged and branded in a way that looks like it's
beautiful marketing.
That's natural and all this stuff. So they know exactly how to get their
They literally will
door.
put on a label gluten-free on like a watermelon.
I'm like there is no fucking gluten in there.
It's crazy what they're doing with the marketing. Right. So pay attention to that stuff because look, our foundational health is food. It's nutrition. Right? Yeah. Food is medicine. And we got to get back to that because most people don't realize the stuff they're putting in their body is creating a very low frequency, low vibration.
Right. And so the doctors that we're working with and the health practitioners that have left the old model of allopathic medicine, by the way, allopathic medicine is fantastic when it comes to emergency care, but it is not health care. It is like management, right? It is pharmacology, which sometimes pharmaceuticals can be a blessing. So it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and the holistic, natural approach whether it be, energy medicine, naturopath, functional medicine, where you can get back to the roots of what is health and then give your body foundation, the physical foundation, but the mental and emotional and spiritual aspect of that.
One of the biggest hypnotic suggestions going on in our society, if you hear a commercial, if you hear a documentary, if they're saying obesity, sickness, chronic illness, ... sleep deprived, all these ailments and symptomologies, cancel, clear, delete, all that. It's not your fault. If you hear that, that's not taking radical self-responsibility for one's own health. Like, the thing I love about, to go totally off topic, is one of the first, I think it's the third principle or something of Burning Man, is radical self-reliance. Exercise with your own inner resources to be able to rely on yourself. Because when you can do that, then you can provide back to the community.
Right.
Right. And this is something where it's like, if you can get your own health under control, now you can help others get their health under control. Because we truly are, I think it's 76% of adults in the US have obesity. Like 76% of us are obese, fat, overweight. And that's not healthy. That's not living a happy, healthy life. Right. And that's not to shame anyone. That's just to say, hey, we have lost our way.
Well, and it's because of the food that people have. I mean, a lot of people, they think that they're eating healthy, but they are not aware that they've been lied to and they've been manipulated.
Most people don't realize, like, almost every piece of processed food in the middle of the grocery store has seed oils, has some kind of dye.
Even if you're getting vegetables, a lot of times
stuff.
It's genetically modified, right? And so it's, it is where we are, and waking up to it and making a change, which I do believe there are changes being made, which is really amazing news, that we can take our power back and get some vegetables growing in the garden if you can. Get your feet in the dirt, all this stuff. And this is the Values Level 6 way. Now, It's also Values Level 6 has brought this beautiful new age movement. It's also about, complete equality across the world, right? This is something that had not been for a very long time. Women and men's rights were not equal. We have friends that are gay, and they tell us horror stories about growing up and having to keep it quiet, right? And being shamed when they came out, or anything that was not traditionally.
It broke the mode.
Right. A traditional way of thinking was considered, they would get ostracized, beat up, shamed, whatever, all of that. And that needed to change. And so Values Level 6 brought that change. It also, then I believe got out of balance as well. And so again, in every values level system, whenever you're trying to do something, so I'm talking about like the feminine movement. From my perspective, being a woman, not all feminists are this way, but because they're fighting against something so very much, it then ends up you end up becoming the person that you're fighting against. Meaning, like, a lot of times women throwing out all the things, saying that like women have as many rights, which they do, as any other person on the planet. But then unconsciously what would happen is then this mindset, I can do it all and I can do everything, then also disenfranchises you, because then you're in a place where you don't feel like, at least for myself, I became super masculine in nature. And then I was controlling everything. I had to control the household. I had to control my own money. I had to control everything, to where in our divine partnership, there was no room for me to actually receive and be a divine feminine, right? And so that can get out of balance. Not saying that all people that are, beating to this drum of feminism is getting out of balance, but just be aware that every values level system can get out of balance. And then you can become what you are totally fighting against, or what you believe against, in that nature.
Yeah. There's just, like, I think the divine feminine and divine masculine, it's something that we're figuring out how to integrate now back into society, because we've gotten so far off, like, a balance, right? It's all about balance. Like, women have their roles of what they're incredibly talented at, and there's some beautiful art, and there's so many things. Yes, they can do everything a man can do. They literally can. Like, that's undisputable. It's just like, there are certain women that don't want to do that, and there's certain women that do.
And again, generalizing for everyone a certain way of being then also puts us in a box.
Right.
And then going down the rabbit hole of the transgender movement, which is a beautiful movement in my perspective, because I think, no matter what somebody believes, no matter what people's background, no matter what they like to do, that's absolutely up to them. And I think that we're all humans. We should treat ourselves as humans and be loving and kind and respectful to other people's belief system. And I do also think it got out of balance in some scenarios where there was, from my perspective, propaganda that was pushing certain ideologies in places that probably it shouldn't be, right? Inside of school systems when people are really little and their minds are fresh. But then also they're also throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now that I see that, I felt like we're going so far of having acceptance for one another in our belief systems, but now everybody's like
Back to the swing.
completely like, some people are
Yeah.
super prejudiced against people that have different sexual orientations, which I think is ridiculous. It's like, come on, guys, let's come. I guess I'm getting heated about that. So there's still triggers to work through because I want us to all come together and see each other as brothers and sisters. We just went to a drag show this last weekend, and it was inside of this beautiful, co-work space that, is for adults only. It's totally appropriate in that context. And it's so much fun. Like, and I love
Beautiful
that
community.
Like, I love all of my, brothers and sisters that have different belief systems.
And we're fostering expression.
Right.
We're fostering some, unfortunately,
and creativity.
There is a lot of trauma in many people that don't know where they stand when it comes to gender. And so it's also allowing them to express themselves in
Freely.
a way that they can get the healing and get the support they need and have community. That's what I think all this comes down to. It boils back
also
down to
being
community.
respectful of other people's model of the world.
Their beliefs.
And
sure.
Thinking about the right context of which you're going to express this.
Now, I will say this. In knowing what we know about installation, hypnosis,
right?
We know so much about the mind when it comes to, how we install things, like how propaganda can be released and propagated throughout humanity. What's going on with the media and the news, and how people are in a constant state of fear and panic and doubt and uncertainty. And so they keep releasing these little pieces of information that keep people in these low vibration frequencies, and it affects your reality. It does. We know this. And so to install that into the young minds and children, and it's almost not like we're even educating a choice. We're flaunting, this is the way. And yet again, it's like, now
back to their parents to educate.
Yeah. We've missed the mark there. It's letting choice happen, but also doing it right time, right place. We shouldn't be installing things in children's minds that may or may not be there. If that became a thing, then absolutely address it. But the human brain is still developing between, 0 to 24, sometimes 26, 27 years old, especially in men, boys.
And these are just our belief systems. So take it with what you believe. And I would really love to see people coming together, because we've gone through these.
What do you think?
Yeah. What do you think? I would really love to see people coming together and coming to the middle of understanding and having a conversation around this. Because the LBT, I'm going to be totally
LGBTQ+.
Yeah, I'm going to totally, please forgive me saying that incorrect. It's a fantastic movement. I feel freedom of expression should happen for people, should they choose to express themselves in a certain way. And if you go back to the scripture and text about, every single tradition around the world talks about the path of ascension is actually marriage between the feminine and male aspect inside the individual, right? And there's mystery school teachings all around the world that talk about divine sexuality between a man and a woman, and sometimes two men, sometimes two women, depending upon the tradition. Sometimes it's just a man and a woman, and sometimes it's just a man and woman inside of yourself doing that practice. However, there is something to be said between divine union. And who are we to say that a child doesn't come in feeling expressed in both ways, right? This goes back to having compassion to other people's model of the world. And so
it may not be your model.
Right.
And you don't have to buy into the model, but you can at least respect and have compassion and appreciate that that is their model.
Right.
That is what we, that's our perspective.
And so what you saw in that contrast and that fighting back and forth, it is what it is. And obviously I have still some work to do around this. I feel like we're going in the opposite direction. I felt like we could come in the center faster. And values level 2 family was like, don't tell my kids, and don't, like, the school and the country does not have the right to parental my children. So that's values level 2, right?
Yeah.
That's protecting your family.
That's family. That's a family.
But then the values level 4, that's saying that this is wrong because it's not in scripture or in the Bible or whatever people believe, that, you know, being gay.
The Bible states this, so this is not right.
Yeah. That person is a sinner.
Values level 4 thinking is very right and wrong.
Right.
There's not a gray area.
You know, we happen to know people that are inside of the Mormon church, or even left the church because of the belief systems in some areas. Not all Mormonism is this way, but in some sects of Mormon, having a gay child is not acceptable, right? And so they're not able to even be part of the religion, right? And so that is something that could be devastating for somebody that incarnates as a gay person, right?
Right.
And so that friction is happening. And then there's this movement where, you know, the belief systems around transgender and expressing yourself and all this stuff. And so these here is all here to teach us how to come together and have conversation to move forward as united people, versus slinging crap back and forth, fighting, and treating each other like animals.
It's asking questions to dig in and really get curious how they think the way they do. Because once you can figure out how someone's thinking and you can appreciate what their values are, then you really know, okay, here's how we can communicate better. Maybe I'll learn something. You know, it goes back to the guy that we flew back next to from Malibu. You know?
Another thing too is ask yourself, what is the political movement behind any of this? And
what's
so
the agenda?
What's the agenda behind the agenda?
There's an agenda.
Because there's always an agenda. And unfortunately, a lot of times values level 5 and or 3-5 will use something that actually is a really powerful movement and use it to manipulate and control. A perfect example of that is, you know, the green movement. And some people will fight me. My father completely disagrees with me, but I believe that the science has been hijacked with something that is beautiful and has so much value that, like, we should care about our planet. We're treating our planet like crap.
I mean, ecology, right? Ecologists, that's like the study of consequences. Like, hey, if we mess up this stream, or we dump this chemical in this ocean, or we do this, right, to this mountainside, will that have a consequence on our environment? Right? Those are great questions to ask. And I think this is where the green movement is a fantastic movement, because we did go crazy during the Industrial Revolution days and that era. And we were sinking stuff in the ocean, probably still are. I'm not sure. Hopefully not. But I mean, there's islands of trash in the middle of the ocean, right? So it's like we're clearly not taking responsibility and being good stewards of our environment. That there's no doubt there, right? If you cut down all the trees, we won't have a forest.
Right.
If you cut down all the trees to build houses, we won't have animals living in those forests, right? So those all have consequences. Now, knowing that and knowing that that is a good piece, where's the balance of, okay, still building a civilization that can develop and do what it does and have the luxuries that we find ourselves enjoying these days, right? The conveniences.
And using that ideology and people that truly do care about the environment, and then creating what quote unquote could be not real science.
But then the political war.
Yeah, and using it as a platform to then become political. And that, I think that's what happened. It hijacked, from my perspective.
Yes.
It did with the climate change movement, to where now it is an ideology, and it's acting as if it is a cult, where a lot of the reasoning behind it, it's not coming from a place of really caring about the planet, because if you start doing the research, the people that are funding this is actually destroying the planet, right? Same thing with the movement of, the transgender movement, which I believe, gays, lesbians, queers, transgender, all of the above, have a right to be their own sovereign beings in their body and enjoy what they want to do. And let's not take this into children's homes and take away the sovereignty and the right of the parents, right? But there was a backing behind that, whether you're aware of it or not, that was pushing an agenda to then disempower the people to have people fight against each other.
Right.
And so if we can just get to the point where we can realize that the reason why we're in conflict is not why we're in conflict. We're not in conflict with the person that you don't agree with. We're in conflict with a system that is designed to keep people in war with each other.
It's the system that creates the conflicts.
Yeah.
And it is a pretty exquisite system, y'all.
Yeah. Because it makes us hate each other when we are all in the same boat together and we are all the same
And I
people.
think if when we really like, I look at like just different laws that were in California living there in the past, you know, it's like if someone hurts themselves and then they decide to sue and then they make that a law because now somebody hurt themselves, like at some point we have to go as a society and as an intelligent, hopefully we're intelligent race,
Right.
like when are people going to take responsibility for themselves? Because if we did more of that, we wouldn't have church trying to get into state trying to get into church, the state overstepping their boundaries in the home, and then, the school. Like there needs to be a level of responsibility that if people kind of, again, elevated their consciousness because they started to, consider growth and development, personal growth, like into their life, who would they become?
Right.
And where would they be? Would we be fighting over minutia that people would just handle on their own? That's the question I ask, is like, if people created this consciousness of evolution, enlightenment, critical thinking, self-reliance, self-responsibility, like, would we be fighting over the
and
things
being
that we do?
respectful to one another, respecting other people's boundaries and model the world, and not doing anything to harm someone.
Right.
Right. And that's a fine line of, being yourself and being authentic and being true to yourself, but then also being aware that your truth may be not necessarily somebody else's truth, to be respectful of other people's boundaries. Right. And so these are just all conversations that it's really important to have. And, we thank you for having this conversation because it is a very triggering conversation for many people. And we want to continue to unpack it from this thinking because this gives us a platform to talk about it, to then have people disagree, which is totally fine.
Have discussion.
Have a discussion and to work things out in a healthy, loving, kind
I
environment.
think over debates, we want to have conversation.
Right.
And I think there's some beautiful podcasts out there that we follow and watch, and that's what we're doing. We're going to take, these conversations and discussions to even some more depth where we can actually get some growth and some learning from them and see different perspectives so we can grow as well.
Right. So we'll see you in the next one. And we're going to be wrapping up values levels and then moving on to the rest of conscious language. So we look forward to seeing you soon.
See you, everyone.
Thank you.